And welcome back to the shop, guys. In this video I will be replacing the chain and sprockets on this KX450X. She's surely in bad shape, folding over these steel teeth at that, and pretty much just ate up all the teeth on the front sprocket. And while I'm swapping these out, I'll be discussing the chains, when to replace them, sprockets. Do you change them as a set? What's okay, what's not okay? Do you lube them, not lube them? What type of lube do you use? And how to optimally set your chain tension. So let's get started. The parts that we have here are some new sprocket hardware. You don't need that, but he brought them with the sprockets and chains, so we're going to be using that. A new front sprocket, new rear sprocket, and a new chain. Now this video is to actually replace a video I did 4 years ago. It was like the second video I did for this channel, and it was very low quality, a lot of background noise, and I didn't quite explain why I do some of the things I do, which caused a lot of negativity on that video. People complaining about the noise, people saying that's not how you do this or that's not how you do that, and I just want to get that video out of here, try to explain why I do some of the things I do, and if you agree, fine. If you don't, hey, there is more than one way to skin a cat. Keep that in mind. We don't all have to do it the same way. As long as the end result is good, that's all that matters. But yeah, first thing I'm going to do is I got to get that chain off of there. That thing is toast. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the chain off. Find the master link here. Now, I'm going to say this when I'm putting the chain back on, but I also want to discuss it when I'm taking the chain off. On the master link, you always want the closed end of the clip for the master link face the direction that the chain goes when the bike is rolling forward. That way the clip doesn't accidentally get knocked off as it's going through your chain guide or whatever. But let's go ahead and knock this one off. Oh, there's that. Let's see, I'll probably stick a flathead right here and pry these up. There we go. Yeah, this chain's in pretty bad shape. She's been around for a little while, but she'll be out of here in a couple minutes. You can see it's done justice to the sprocket here. And this was a steel sprocket. I mean, it's a Renthal. It's one of them hybrid sprockets that's aluminum down there and steel where the teeth are at. All right. That chain is out of here. Alright, now I'm going to remove the whole rear wheel. One of the comments I received from the previous video was, you always loosen up the sprocket bolts before you take the wheel off the bike. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I mean, we can loosen them up right here, like this, before we take it off, but in all honesty, for me, it's just kind of easier to get the wheel off and get it on the bench and loosen them up there. If you want to loosen them up while it's on the bike, there's nothing wrong with that. Let me go ahead and get the wheel off and we'll get it to the bench. Alright, I got the wheel on the bench here. This is a I call it a steel sprocket. It's one of the hybrids. It's aluminum right here, steel right there. But you can see these teeth are bent over. They're not worn, they're actually bent. And what causes that is when the chain becomes old and stretched out. Here, let me remove this chain from the bag here, the new chain. I'll show you what I mean. Alright, we got the new sprocket here, and we have the new chain. So if I wrap this chain around the sprocket, like so, and I pull back on it right here, you can see I can hardly pull that link up off of the sprocket, which means every link is sitting fully in the seat of the sprocket. It's not sitting on the tips of the teeth, it's sitting up in the seat. Now if we take the same new sprocket and put the old worn out chain on it, first off, I can't even get this thing all the way around without it lifting up over here. You see how it's lifting up? Watch this. See how I'm able to push it down? But watch when I pull. Look at this. I can literally pull this chain up, off, completely off. It's sitting on right here and sitting right there. We're not missing any teeth. It's just that stretched out. And that's what causes your sprockets to wear. If we were to use this chain on a new sprocket, while it's wrapped around the bike, you can see, let's say it's driving from right here. It's the front sprocket is over there, and it's pulling on this chain right here. It's on the bike, imagine that. And down here, you'll see it's not even sitting on the teeth anymore. It rises up because each link of this chain is stretched out. So what happens is all the torque, all the power is applied only on the top front teeth right up here, and it rises up when it pulls on it. So when you give it throttle, watch this rise up. I don't know if you can see on the camera. Let me set it back down. Watch. You see it rise up? So when it rises up, that's what causes the wear that you see on the sprocket here. That's what causes it to just roll these teeth right on over, because it's not sitting in the belly anymore. It's sitting on the tips of the teeth, and that's where you're going to get your wear at. And when a chain stretches, as we call it, it doesn't mean it actually physically stretches. The links aren't actually becoming longer. What's happening is the pins, and inside of here, these pins and also the holes that these pins go into, they just get worn and they get sloppy, right? I'll show you a good example. This is the new chain. I'm going to hold it like this. I'm going to bend it. You can see it only has a little bit of flex one way or another, or play, should I call it. Now watch this old chain. Look at this. That's because of all the slop in these pins. It's just gotten worn out. Again, this is the new one. You can hardly do it. And this is the old one. So that's all that happens is they get worn out where the pins go through the middle of the links, and it causes each link to now sit further apart, which causes it not to line up with the sprocket perfectly anymore and rise up high on the sprocket, and that's what causes the wear on your sprockets. So you'll often hear people say sprockets and chains should be changed out as a complete set. That's where I disagree. First off, tell that to the racer that has multiple rear wheels with sprockets already on it, so they can just change out a rear wheel depending on what terrain they're on, the hard pack tire, soft terrain tire, or changing their sprockets for different gear ratios for different tracks. Tell that to him, that he always needs to put on a brand new chain, brand new sprockets every time. He cannot mix and match, because that would become a pain in the butt if you had to swap out a chain and a front sprocket just because you're changing out a rear wheel. Here's my philosophy. A old chain, worn out chain, will kill your sprockets, but a new chain will extend the life of your current sprockets. As long as they still have some life on them, it'll extend the life, because the old chain is going to ride up high on the teeth and wear up the top where they're thinner, and even to the point of bending them when it gets up high enough, where a new chain will sit back down up in the belly of the sprocket where it has all this meat and strength, and it'll extend the life of your sprocket. So if you're going to be swapping rear wheels and sprockets, just always make sure the chain is in better shape than the sprockets that you're running, and you'll be fine. Don't ever put a chain that's in worse shape on sprockets that are in better shape, because you're just going to take them sprockets and quickly wear them down to the level of that chain. I'll show you a few examples. This sprocket right here, look how thin these teeth are worn out. That's because for the most of its life, I kept a good chain on the sprocket, and that's a properly worn sprocket will wear them like this. It's not going to bend them over like that. You can see how right there, here we go, I got something to point with here. That's the belly right there. That's where the chain should be riding. You can see the chain starting to get a little bit worn and start riding a little higher right up here, and that's what caused the last little bit of wear. If the chain would have got a little more worn out and stretched out than that, it would have rose up even a little bit higher, and that would have done this sprocket in. But as long as you can keep a chain healthy enough that it stays in the belly, you can get a lot of life out of your sprockets. I'll show you some more examples here. Here's another one. I kept this one in the belly for most of its life. You can see it did start to rise up to right about there, These are all aluminum sprockets. I run aluminum sprockets myself because I like to keep the weight down on my wheels. Another sprocket right here. Always kept a good healthy chain on this one. So you can see it's worn them thinner, but it's staying up in the belly here, and that's where you get long life out of your sprockets. Got another one here, same thing. You can see it was riding right about here. Again, a brand new chain will ride right here. As they start to stretch, they'll start riding, putting the stress further up the tooth. And the same applies for your front sprocket as well. My personal bike right here, this chain is almost new. I only have maybe about 2 days of riding on it, but the sprocket was used already, but it's still healthy. And so I just do a new chain on it. That's going to extend the life of the sprocket, because if I would have just kept on running that chain, before you know it, I would have had to replace all my sprockets and the chain. It's just cheaper to replace your chain when it starts getting stretched out. And one way to know, a quick way to know how far of life your chain has, what lifespan it's in, is just to pull it back here. You can see it start, this one has a little bit of pullback. Now keep in mind, the sprocket already had a little bit of wear from age. If this was new sprocket, I'd hardly be able to pull that back. But that's okay, because the chain's not stretched out, so it is riding in the belly and not wearing out the sprocket. But if you pull this back and you can see the whole tooth like on that other sprocket, well, you know it's done. Now I have a new sprocket for it right up there, but there's no sense in putting that sprocket on yet, because this one's still good. All I had to do is this is just a $60 chain right here. All I had to do is throw on a nice $60 chain, and this sprocket's probably going to last just as long as this chain will. And then I'll probably change it out, as I said, at that point. Same with the front sprocket. You can see this one's starting to get a little thin. Actually, I'm going to say this one's about due. I'm probably just going to go ahead and swap this one out. But I'm not going to change the chain out. I'm not going to change out the rear sprocket. I'm just going to change out the front sprocket. I actually have one here. Glad I noticed that, by the way. And there will be people that disagree with that, like one of the comments on the video that this video will be replacing. A guy completely called me a hack for not using a new front sprocket. All I did on that video was change out the rear sprocket and the chain. The front sprocket still had life on it. Called me a hack for doing that, but again, my philosophy is the chain should be in better shape than the sprockets, and it'll extend the life of the sprockets. So I'm okay with putting a new chain on used sprocket, but I will not put a set of new sprockets or a new sprocket on a worn out chain. Just won't do it. I will if the chain's still young, like this one is right here. I mean, I only have about 2 days of ride on this chain, so I'm okay with putting a brand new front sprocket on it. But once this chain starts to get once it's into about 25% of its life and it has 75% left, I'm not going to put any more new sprockets on it. I'll just run it. But as long as the chain's in better shape than the sprockets, your sprockets are going to last. Don't worry about that. Because as you can see here, this one, there's a lot of meat right here in the middle. If he would have replaced this chain, he could have totally ran the sprocket for a long time. That's what these steel sprockets are for, right? You're supposed to be able to use them for a long time, but it doesn't matter. If your chain gets worn out, it's going to wear out the sprocket no matter how tough or strong it is. And that's why I'm not scared to use aluminum sprockets. I get good long life out of them as long as I keep a fresh chain on it. For our dirt bikes at least. I understand the guys that ride on the street with dual sports and stuff, you're getting so many miles out of a sprocket, then a steel sprocket makes more sense. But in motocross, we try to keep the weight down. Aluminum sprocket is really the way to go. Okay, let's go ahead and change out the sprocket. Again, I like to do these on the bench myself. You can do it on the bike if you like. For me, it's just easier to get it on the bench where I don't have to stay bent over the whole time. And I seem to be less likely to jack up my hands on the sprocket when it's on the bench. But to each your own. And again, there's more than one way to skin a cat, you know? Okay, I got all that's the first thing I do is I loosen up the nuts on the bottom end. And from here on out, I can just use any type of tool to get it, do the rest of the work for me. And you want to loosen it up first and finishing up the tighten up with the nut on the bottom. You don't want to use the Allens. You're quicker to strip these out, and because they sit in a concave surface in there, they have a lot of friction, so it's best to loosen them up down with the nut on the bottom. But now that I have that loose, let's go ahead and stick this on my impact. That'll do all the twisting for me. Get this off real quick. Drop them in there. I'll pick them up at the end. Okay, I got most of them off camera here. We have new sprocket hardware, so that's good. You don't need new sprocket hardware. You can reuse your existing sprocket hardware. There's nothing wrong with that. Collect the stuff that fell down here. Alright, I'm just going to wipe up the surface that the sprocket sits on, just in case there's any dirt or anything. I want to make sure the sprocket gets a nice flat seat. Okay. And a brand new Renthal sprocket. And this is an all aluminum one, so that's cool. And we have some new mica bolts. Now these already come with the locking agent on them, so we'll be good there. Plus the nuts are lock nuts as well. If you're reusing your OEM hardware or whatever hardware you have on your bike, I suggest you put a dab of Loctite on each one of these bolts, just for safety reasons. I know they have lock nuts on them, but it's still good to put a little bit of Loctite just to be safe. When these things come loose, it just tears a lot of stuff up. But anyway, all I'm doing right now is just finger tightening the nuts onto the bolts. Now I'll use my impact here just to seat them down. I'm not going to be tightening them up. I got on setting number 1, which doesn't provide a lot of torque. This is just doing all the twisting for me, that's all. Oh, wrong way. Did I do this one? Nope. Okay, now I'll tighten them by hand. That's how I prefer to do it. Instead of making the impact do all the work, I like to feel it. So, let's see here. I like to get them pretty tight. You obviously don't want to strip them out. They have torque specs for them too if you want to do all that. And again, I'm using the nut to do the tightening. The Allen up here, I'm putting that there just to hold it, keep it from spinning. But I'm using, there you go. I'm using the nut to tighten it up because that's where you're going to get the most bite and the least amount of friction to get it nice and tight. You can see there's enough friction up here that I'm actually able to tighten the bottom up without the top even turning. Even with that one right there, see? Sometimes you don't even need the Allen. There's that much friction. Alright, I'm going to make a second round just to be safe. I don't want to miss one of these, I'll tell you that. Just want to make sure I got them tight. And there we go, the sprocket's on. Now most people already know this, but for the guys that don't, there are two types of chains out there. You have your O-ring or X-ring. You're basically your sealed chains. And you have your non-O-ring or non-X-ring ring, your standard type chains. The main difference is the O-rings have this little O-ring right here in the middle of each pin or link. And what that does is that locks the grease that they have in there from the factory. It locks it in. It keeps it nice and lubed up in there, and it extends the life of the chain significantly. Actually, you're probably more likely to wear a flat spot right here, like this chain. It's a used one. You can see it's worn flat right here. You're probably more likely to wear it flat than you are to, and you'll also wear out these little rollers in the middle. They'll start getting play up in there. You're going to wear that out before you actually stretch the chain out to any significant amount, which can greatly increase the life of your sprockets. And you don't have to adjust your chain nearly as much. The downside of these O-ring chains is they are heavier And because they have them little O-rings, there is more friction. Look at this. It'll just stand up. There's more friction. They're heavier. They're going to rob a minute amount of horsepower, and they're going to have a little more rolling resistance. Then you have your standard chains. Watch this one. There's like no friction here. See? It's lighter because it doesn't have to be as wide to make space for the O-rings that this one has. You can see, if I bring it up here, you can see it's clearly a wider chain. These are good for motocross. You're going to have to adjust your chain more often. They're going to wear out a little bit quicker, but you're going to get a little bit less friction, and they're going to be lighter. These can be okay for motocross too, especially for the bigger bikes like the 450s that just like to chew through chains. If you're the type of guy you just don't want to deal with it and you don't want to keep adjusting your chain and replacing chains quite often, this might not be bad for you. But if you're looking for maximum performance, lightweight, that kind of stuff, then just go with the your standard non-O-ring chain. Okay, let's get the front sprocket on there. Now obviously you'll need to remove whatever cover you have over your front sprocket. Hopefully you have a cover on your front sprocket. I know some people like to pull them off. You see the pros bikes without covers on them. But for safety reasons, I like to leave them on. Less likely, if you lay your bike over, less likely your fingers are going to get up in here and get chopped off or anything like that. I just leave my guards on. Okay, every bike's going to be a little bit different. Some have a washer that has a spot you can bend over to lock it in. Some don't, like your Hondas. They don't have one. If you're doing this on a Honda, make sure you use Loctite on that 12mm bolt. If you have a locking tab like this, you don't have to worry about Loctite. Your Yamahas, Kawasaki's, they do it like this. I'll be using an impact to take this off. If you don't have an impact and you still have teeth on your sprocket, I have seen people, and I've even done it myself in the past, lock up the rear wheel by putting a rag in the and between the chain and the sprocket or whatever, keeping the rear wheel from spinning, so that you can get a wrench on this and loosen this up. But if you have an impact, this sure does make things a lot easier. As you can see, this thing spins, right? And that's the beauty of an impact. Alright, let's pull this old thing off. That thing is done. On some bikes, the sprocket has one side that sticks out a little bit further in the center section than the other. So just pay attention to that, and which that means that it is important to have the sprocket on the correct way. So make sure you pay attention to that. If anything, check your manual or just pay attention to how it came off. As long as the front sprocket was wearing good and evenly on both sides, you can assume it was correct. This one, it's the same on either side, so we actually have the choice of which side we want to put facing towards us. I'm going to put the pretty side towards us. There we go. And then let's see here. Put this thing back on there. I won't have to use Loctite because it does have that locking washer there that we can just bend the tab over on it. All right, let me seat it down with the impact. There we go. Get some channel locks. All right. Just use some channel locks here to bend this back over. And that'll be good. And then we'll go ahead and put the front guard back on. And again, I like to use these front guards. I know you see the pros without them on their bike, but keep in mind they are pros. They have insurance and stuff. Also, it works for them. You know, it helps them show off their chains and sprockets for their sponsors. And if they were to derail a chain or anything mid-race, it might help the mechanic get things back on a little quicker. But for us normal folks that don't get paid to ride our dirt bikes, it's just safer to have a front sprocket on there. They come stock with them on there for a reason. And of course, as I say in all my videos, you'll see me using an impact when I take things apart, but I'm real cautious to where I use them when it's time to put it back together. As you see, I'm using a hand tool right here to put this on. You can strip these out really easily, so don't go crazy with them. Just snug them down pretty good and tighten them up, and that's it. Okay, gonna put the rear wheel back on. I had to put new brake pads on the bike, so that's why the brake pads are already split pretty wide. But if yours are tight, you can stick something plastic or even a screwdriver if you're real careful, and you can separate the pads, help make it a little easier to get the wheel in there and get everything lined up. But I took the time to clean all this in here. So yeah, let's go ahead. Oh, also I lubed the axle here. You're going to want to have some type of lube on it, grease or whatever. I actually use PJ1 Black Magic chain lube. That stuff does real good for this without making a mess, but it definitely keeps it where I won't have to hit the axle to get it out like what you saw at the beginning of the video here. Alright, let me get the back wheel back on. Before I forget, before I go any further, I need to prime that rear brake. So I'm just going to pump the brake pedal here. There we go. Get that out of the way, because the last thing I want is him to go for a ride, hit the back brake. It doesn't work, and he has to pump it a few times to get it working. I'll try to get that out of the way as soon as I can remember. Okay, there's two ways you can purchase chains. You can purchase them with the correct links for your bike. It's already cut to the length of your bike. Or you can purchase them with the 120 links like this one is and have to cut it down to your bike. So let me go ahead and fish it on through. Okay, it's time to cut the chain down to size. Since this was not a pre-cut chain, I have to cut it down to size. I kind of already figured out where I need to have it cut. You're going to want to try to mock it up and adjust it to figure out where you need to cut it if that's the case. Or you can take your previous chain, lay it down flat, count the links, compare it to the new chain, and cut it to match the exact links. Again, there's more than one way to skin a cat. They do sell pin pushers, chain breakers, whatever, that can push these pins right on through. You can buy them if you want. For this video, I'm just going to be grinding it off. I've done it like this a million times. I already know that I have to cut right there. Now keep in mind, you want to cut it in a fashion so that you have an inner set and an outer set. So you need two inner sets right here like that. An inner there and inner there for the master link to hold it together. If you cut it like this with the outer and inner, it's not going to work. So they have to be even numbers of links. So I know I need to cut this one off right here. Put a rag right here just to catch the flames and the fires and the sparks. It can get a little ugly. So this is one I need to cut off. I'm going to put a mark on it so I know that's the one to cut. So I'm going to cut the wrong one. I'm going to get this one out of the way because I want to keep that clean. Just drop that down there. And I'll go ahead and cut it. Now you can do this on a vise on the bench if you don't want to, shoot metal debris on your bike like this. There's nothing wrong with that. I like to do it on the bike because I can actually get a mock-up fit of the chain before I cut it. Plus the sprocket does a really good job at holding the chain for me. When you do this all the time like I do, this just becomes quicker and easier. So let me go ahead and grind this down. I'll show you what I'm doing here. Obviously, make sure you don't have any gasoline nearby or anything like that. I mean, the gas that's in the tank is fine. That's sealed, but you understand what I'm saying. Okay, all I've done is just grind it down flat, the pins, the top of the pins here. So now I'll just get a flat head and knock that link apart. Again, they do sell chain breakers for this kind of stuff. If you're going to buy one of them, make sure you pick up a quality chain breaker. The cheap ones have a tendency to break sometimes before they even break the chain. I'm just going to stick a flathead right in here to start it for me. And again, that's the beauty of doing it on the bike, is the sprocket holds the chain on here for you. Starting to come off. Alright, got that side off right there. Side's about to pop off. There it is. Slide that link out. I can remove this rag now that collected all the... Be careful too when if you use a rag or something. Sparks can sometimes catch a rag on fire and start smoking. Alright, we have a match. Let me go get the master link. Okay, slide the master link on in here. There we go. Now sometimes on some chains, like the EK chains, this part of the master link, you're not going to be able to slide all the way onto the master link to be able to get the clip on. So I'm going to take a clip from the original video I did in a second and plug that into this video, showing you guys that have a chain like that how to get them on there. But for right now, let's focus on this one. So the clip, again, the closed end of the clip needs to be pointed the direction the chain goes when the rear wheel is spinning and the bike's going forward, so it'll go that way. That's real important. You will lose a chain if you put this on backwards, I'm telling you. I've done it years ago. One time's all it took me. Okay, got that on the correct way. Again, when the bike's going forward, rear wheel spins this way, which means the master link, the closed end, will be facing the direction the chain's going. Far less likely it's ever going to get knocked off. Okay, now we need to adjust that chain. But before we adjust the chain, let me plug in from the old video showing you how to put the master links on the type of chains that you have to actually press that link on. Let me show you that real quick. Here you go. Now these things come with a little bit of grease, so just poke some grease in the holes here. Pull it on both sides where the O-ring seals will go. Pop an O-ring on here. There. And pop another O-ring on this side. Now with this chain, these links, you can't just push it on with your hand. It's like interference fit going onto the pins. So you have to, what I use is a pair of old vice grips. Like Vice Grip Garage. Doesn't take much, just gentle. You don't want to bend them. All you got to do is just slowly work it in until you can get the clip on there. You always want to have the clip facing with the open end towards the back of the bike when the chain's on the top. Basically, as the tire rotates the direction that the bike rolls when it's rolling forward, you want the closed end to be heading forward. These can be sometimes tricky. There it is. Okay, back to modern day time here. Alright, when it comes to adjusting the chain, a lot of people use this stupid thing's in our way here. A lot of people use the 3-finger rule, 4-finger rule, or whatever. But you know, every bike's a little different, and if you're going to use the fingers, you better be real familiar with your bike. In the manual, they'll tell you, you know, a certain distance, how many millimeters, inches, or whatever. But here's the thing. You have a bottom chain roller right down here, and you have a chain slider up here. When the chain slider is new, it's going to pick your chain up a little bit right here, and you'll see as I pick up the chain, you see back here in the back end how it becomes tighter? And then also your chain roller right here, as it wears out, it will allow your chain to sit looser while the bike's on the stand. But watch this. You see how the chain up there? Let me do it again. Watch this. You see how it became tighter as I lifted that up? So when you use the 3-finger rule, you're always doing it on the stand. And as the chain guide wears and the chain roller wears, it's going to change how many fingers it takes to get the optimum chain adjustment. But here's the way I do it to get the optimum chain adjustment. And let me explain my theory here. Your chain's tightest point in its stroke, and that's really what we're worried about, is not letting the chain become too tight. The tightest it's going to be is when the front sprocket, the swing arm pivot bolt, and the rear axle are in a straight line. And that's going to be when your rear end is compressed to right about there. It'll be in a straight line with them two. Let's see. Yeah, right about there. When the rear end compresses to right about there, it's in a straight line. That's the tightest your chain's ever going to be, because this is the pivot point to your swing arm. So as it continues to compress more, it'll actually start loosening up again, much like when it's on the stand, it becomes a little looser. So what I like to do is I like to adjust the chain, then put the bike on its wheels, press the rear end down, and feel how tight it is until I get it where it's just not too tight. It's right on the edge. Could be almost too tight, but it's not too tight. That's the perfect adjustment. That's going to leave you with the least amount of slop while you're out riding. You're going to have a little bit more instant throttle response when you're in the air and you have to blip the throttle to lift the rear end up. You're not going to have a sloppy chain rattling around and stuff. So let's go ahead and do that. I will first start by adjusting it to what I think is close while it's on the stand. Then I'm going to take it off the stand. I have the rear axle nut not fully tight. I want the rear wheel to be able to slide back and forth as I adjust it, but I do have it tight enough where there's some friction that'll stay put on its own as I make these changes. So let me go ahead and 1, 2, 3. It's very important also to make sure your axle is even between this side and the other side. That way your back wheel is straight and it's not turned a little bit to the left or to the right. I think everyone knows that by now. But alright, let me go ahead and take it off the stand and we'll continue our adjustment from there. Okay, she's off the stand. I got her on the kickstand. That's convenient for this bike. I'm going to go ahead and press on the rear end and check the chain. Looks like I can afford to bring her a little bit tighter, so let's do that. Okay, let me check it again. That's actually too tight. That's actually too tight in my opinion. So let me bring her down, back down some. Okay, this has these aftermarket adjusters, by the way. That's why I'm having to do things a little bit funny here. Okay, let's check that. That's good right there. It's just a little bit of play, and when it's in the tightest, when it's in its position where it's going to be the tightest. So let's go ahead and put it back on the stand and we'll lock her in. There we go. And lastly, now that I have the axle bolt tightened down and everything's adjusted, I'm going to tighten these up against that so they don't come loose on their own from vibration. I'll do the other side too. If you have the stock type setup where it has the 10mm here and a 12mm there, I still do the same thing. I tighten this up against the axle block first, and then I lock in the 12mm. And that's it for this girl. She's ready to go. I don't know if you guys noticed, I also put a new tire on her while I had the back wheel off there. But alright, let's talk about chain lube for a second here. I personally do not put chain lube on my bikes here in Florida. Here you go. Here's my 125 right here. You can look up in there and you can see, let me get a light up in there. It's all nice and clean. And the reason being is because I don't use chain lube. For me, all chain lube does is collect dirt on the chain, which acts like a rubbing compound, and it just, in my opinion, it kind of accelerates the wear of a chain. What I am focused on is keeping it from rusting. So after I wash the bike, I spray the chain down with WD-40. That's the only lube it gets, just a little bit of WD-40, keeps it from rusting, and it keeps the squeaks down. If you keep the rust away, they won't squeak. So that's what I do. And that way dirt doesn't stick to the chain, and I don't get a buildup of chain lube gunk up in here. I will say street bikes are a little bit different. You know, when you're just doing a lot of miles of consistently spinning and you're not in the dirt, chain lube's a good thing. But on these dirt bikes, we are in the dirt. I mean, this chain literally sometimes goes right through the dirt and corners. And what do you think chain lube's doing? It's allowing the dirt to stick to the chain, and it just acts like a rubbing compound. So I would rather have a dry chain. I haven't noticed a shortness of life with dry chains. It's been just, I pretty much get the same life, lube or no lube. So might as well just use no lube, just WD-40, keep it from rusting, and I'll have a cleaner bike. And you might disagree, and that's okay. Again, there's more than one way to skin a cat. I'm just telling you how I do it here in my shop. And at the same time, if you have any ideas that are good or work for you, let me know. I learn from you guys too. You'll be amazed at some of the stuff I've learned from the comments in this channel, and it's helped me out right here in the shop, so I appreciate that. If you're going to come and correct me, don't be rude like the guy in the other video calling me a hack and stuff. That doesn't get you very far. Be a friend and show me the right way politely, and you get a lot more with sugar than you, what did it say? You attract a lot more bees with honey than you do vinegar. Plus, I try to keep this channel positive, and when people start arguing in the comments and bickering and calling people names, it's just not a very positive environment. When I'm in the shop working or when I'm on the track, it's my happy place, right? So I try to keep it like that. Anyway, I think that's everything. Let me know if I missed something. This weekend I'll be riding at Moto Bros Punta Gorda. Haven't been to the new track, the new Moto Bros of Punta Gorda yet. I will be taking the YZ125 out for that one. I'm hoping on getting on mounting up the MX-34 tires for this weekend, so I can go ahead and start the review on that. And then on Sunday, I'm going to be at Dade City Motocross, the extended track. I will have the GoPro for that, doing a little review on the tires. I'm going to weigh them, see if they're heavier or lighter, how they feel on the track. Hopefully they're good. So I hope all you guys have a good weekend of riding, and I hope the rain holds out so we all get a good weekend of riding. Appreciate you guys watching these videos, and catch you next time.